Hi everyone. Today I'm going to do a review of a video by Exmo because she said some things in one of her latest videos that I thought were very interesting. This video is her reacting to other people's reactions to people leaving Mormonism. At the beginning of the video, she reacts to her own family's reactions, and then she reacts to the reactions of other people that she was sent through mostly YouTube comments, I believe. So I wanted to start with the beginning of the video where she talks about her parents' reaction because she says something specifically about what her mother said to her that I thought was very interesting.
The number one best thing that any of my believing family members said to me after I left was from my mom. And I'll never forget her exact words because it made me feel so much lighter. One day, pretty soon after I left the church, we were talking and she said, "Family is a heck of a lot more important than religion."
So this statement that Lexi's mother made to her becomes a theme, I would say, of this video a little bit. Is family more important than religion? And obviously, both Lexi and her mother would say yes. However, for me, looking at it, looking at what religion is, the only way I can say that family is more important than religion is if that religion is actually not true. Because if the religion is true, then the eternal lives of everybody in the family depends on whether they follow that religion. To the extreme, usually, of people burning in hell forever if they don't follow the religion. Now, that's not what Mormonism teaches in particular, but it does teach that people will be eternally less happy if they don't follow the religion. And because of that, I just don't see how Lexi's mother is justified based on her beliefs in saying that family is more important than religion. Because, in my mind, if she were consistent with her beliefs, she would say that religion has to come before family because family is completely dependent on religion in the eternal sense. And eternity is far more important than whatever happens in our very, very short time here on earth. Now, obviously, I don't believe that myself. I believe that this life is all that we know we have, and we should absolutely put it first. But that's not how a religious person is usually going to view things. And I think that this becomes clear as you look at some of the reactions in Lexi's video. So the next reaction I want to highlight, and I think this is the first reaction from anyone other than her family that Lexi covers, is a reaction where somebody who was in the process of realizing the church wasn't true asked her mother what she thought was an easy question, which is whether she would rather have her kids be alive and not in the church or dead but having lived their whole lives in the church. And she thought there was an easy answer to this question, but her mother said that she couldn't answer it. And that left her thinking, okay, well, I guess my mother would rather have me dead and in the church rather than alive and out of it. And this was Lexi's take on the situation.
So, this is a great example of how not to act when a loved one leaves the church. Like Hallie said, this question should have an extremely simple answer. The LDS Church claims to value families more than any other religion. They put a huge emphasis on families. If they care so much about families, it shouldn't even be a question. Of course you would rather have your children be alive regardless of what their beliefs are. Anything else sounds real cult-like, don't you think?
So I would say I don't think that's really any more cult-like than any other religion because all religions teach that your eternal happiness depends on what you do while you're alive. And if you are basing your eternal happiness on whether or not somebody's in the church, then the question isn't just a simple, well, would you rather I were dead and in the church or alive and out of the church, it becomes, would you rather be separated from me right now, but know that I was going to be happy with you forever? Or would you rather be separated from me forever and know that I was going to be less happy because of a choice that I made? Well, for me, the answer, based on the question being taken that way, is obvious, but in the opposite direction from what Lexi thought it was. It's obvious that a religious person would rather their children die. And that's frustrating and heartbreaking, but that's really what the religion, if you believe it, really kind of forces a person to come to the conclusion is best for their children. And so I don't actually blame the mother for not answering the question, because the alternative would have been to lie about how she felt. And I don't think that that's something that I would encourage someone to do. So I actually think in this case, based on what she was probably feeling, the mother probably handled the situation pretty well as could be expected given her beliefs. So the next reaction is similar but different, and so I'm going to play it for you and then talk about it.
I told my mom I didn't believe anymore. She texted me that my leaving was worse and hurt her more than when my sister died. This is similar to the last one, but in more direct terms. I'm sorry. This is heartbreaking. Please, if you're religious and your children leave, don't say such hurtful things to them. If you don't feel like you can express yourself without saying something like this, don't say anything. Give yourself time to process so that you can be more positive.
Now, in my mind, the reason that this is different is because this mother probably wasn't asked to share that type of information with her child. However, it really doesn't surprise me again that she felt that way. I think that it probably isn't the best idea to share that kind of information with your children, but I don't really fault her for thinking it, because again, that's what the religion programs people to have to think. And so I see that as kind of the baseline behavior. And any other behavior is people acting inconsistently with their religion. And so I kind of feel as if, in this case, taking the stance that Lexi does, where she says, oh, just wait till you can be more positive, is kind of making light of a very serious thing, which Lexi goes into in the beginning of her video. She actually says that, of course, you'd be devastated if a family member leaves the church because you believe that their eternal happiness is dependent on their choices. So it's not that Lexi doesn't understand this, or at least it's not that she doesn't understand this all the time. It's just that I feel like she's not giving it the weight that it deserves in this case, because if she did, I think she would recognize that most people who were being consistent with their beliefs would come to the conclusion that it actually was worse than death to have somebody leave the church. So then Lexi reacts to a reaction that I think was actually very selfish, regardless of whether you believe in the church or not. And the reaction was essentially referring to leaving the church as doing something to the person who is reacting. So the mother saying to the child, I never thought that you would do this to me. And in my mind, that is a selfish way to look at it, because even if the religion is true, they're clearly doing something to themselves that's far worse than whatever might be the effect on you. And so I do see that as a very selfish reaction. However, after Lexi finishes reacting to this, she says something that I think is very interesting.
Your children choosing to live their life in a way that brings them happiness and fulfillment isn't them doing something to you. If someone you love is happy, how hard is it to just be happy for them?
And this is interesting to me because Lexi kind of answered her own question in the beginning of the video, which is it's very hard to just be happy for someone who you think is jeopardizing their eternal salvation. It's very hard to be happy for someone who is messing up their eternal life in your perspective. And so I don't see why Lexi has to ask that question and has to look at it only from her perspective in this part of the video, because it contradicts with what she said earlier. She knows how people feel about this, and yet it's as if she chooses to forget it farther on into her video. And that's just kind of frustrating to me.
My grandparents said, "We still love you and know that after you're done with this phase, you'll come back to the truth." Essentially, they cemented the fact that their love is conditional and that they know me better than I know myself. Don't do the "you're going through a phase" thing. Again, it's just one of those things that you cannot know unless you're the person going through it.
So in this case, I see this reaction as a form of denial, which is one of the stages of grief. And I think it makes perfect sense for somebody to feel that way. It's probably not the most tactful thing to express that to somebody, but I've had other people express certain types of denial to me. Not the going through a phase comment, but another comment. Um, Someone told me, oh, well, you'll probably be fine because the reason you're struggling with the church is because you're probably autistic. And so I think God will judge you differently because of that, which could be considered very offensive, but I see it as a form of denial because they would rather not have admitted that based on their belief system, I was going to be less happy for the rest of eternity based on my leaving the church or distancing myself from the church. And so I can see why they chose to think that way. And that's my thoughts on that. So then at the end of this video, Lexi says some things that I think are very important and very insightful. And I'll play the first one and talk about it, and then play the second one and talk about it as kind of my conclusion.
We want to do what's right. We just believe that what's right is different than what you believe it is.
So I have a couple of thoughts on that. The first, in keeping with the theme of this overall video, I guess, is that obviously wanting to do what's right but believing it's different goes both ways. You have people who are reacting to people leaving the church in ways that we would consider bad, and yet they're doing it based on their beliefs. So it's really their beliefs that are at fault more than them, in my opinion, for these quote unquote bad reactions. From their perspective, these are either good reactions or reactions that they feel like they couldn't help because they're responding to what to them may be a very traumatic experience of finding out they're going to lose a loved one for all eternity. The second thing I want to point out, though, is that in my mind, I don't think that the belief system of a religious person allows for believing that the other person who's leaving the religion actually wants to do the right thing. Because if you believe that, then you believe that God is essentially punishing someone for doing the right thing, for doing what they think is the right thing. And they wouldn't believe that God would do that. Therefore, they have to project what they think the other person is believing onto them. And rather than listening, they have to come up with a straw man version of what the other person is thinking and feeling, because to accept the truth would be to undermine their whole religious system.
If Mormon God is real, and he's the loving God that Mormons describe him as, he wouldn't punish you or your family members, here or in the afterlife, for simply doing what they believe is right.
And that's what it really comes down to, I think. Do religious people believe that God would punish people for doing what they believe is right? I say most of them don't. I say, like I said before, that they just straw man the other person in order to have to avoid dealing with the issue. But for religious people who really listen, I think this does raise a serious question for them. And I think it can be a major quote unquote shelf item for religious people to have a loved one leave the religion if they will actually listen to that loved one and find out why that person left, because then they may realize that the other person is trying to do the right thing. And if so, God it would be punishing them for doing the right thing as they see it. And that's something that I don't think religion at all accounts for. And I think that this is one of the major flaws of religion. So, those are my thoughts on Exmo Lex's video. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye.